Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at EX4, and EX4 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a new deck that wants to start forming itself as of EX4, and that's going to be the Ravemon deck. So Ravemon, while it's not necessarily a complete deck, we do know that we're going to be getting some of his other cards in BT13 to better support the deck, but that doesn't mean that we can't start playing the deck now, just because there is a lot of interesting tech and tools that we could do with the theme of self-deletion. So Ravemon's core mechanic is he wants to delete himself to be able to give himself lots of additional benefits and be able to replay himself on top of trying to disrupt and control the opponent all at the same time. So Bandai highlighted this deck on their website as one of the big new decks introduced into the set, and they have a nice little write-up on some of the cards and what they're doing and their synergies, on top of staples you should get for the deck and a recommended deck composition that they are suggesting, on top of the overall strategy write-up to try to help you understand what the deck is trying to do. But that's just their interpretation of the deck, and this is my interpretation of the deck. So, starting off with the Digitama, I am going to be running 4 copies of DemiMeramon as the main Digitama, because we do like having all of these on-delete inheritable abilities to pair up with our higher stage when our Digimon gets deleted, and DemiMeramon, unlike Pinamon, doesn't have any conditions attached to it to be able to make sure that we can always get its inheritable ability off, and its inheritable ability is also going to help with some extra cycling for some added consistency. But I still am going to be running 1 copy of Pinamon as the 5th Digitama, because I want to see an inheritable ability of On Delete again to try to pair up with all of our other On Delete inheritables, so when our Digimon gets deleted, we can get as much value out of our card as we possibly can. It's just this compared to DemiMeramon actually does have a condition, so it's not going to be as useful all of the time, but the fact that we still have easy ways to be able to meet its condition makes it still a very valuable egg for us to use. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gabumon. So this is the BT2 version of Gabumon, and like our eggs, we only really care about the fact that it is a Digimon with an inheritable on-deletion effect for us to try to use in combination with all of our other cards and all of the other on-delete effects we could possibly be pairing with it. And Gabumon is also acting like DemiMeramon, adding extra consistency when our Digimon gets deleted. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gazimon. So Gazimon is a tech or flex spot for the deck, and it could really be whatever you feel like you want it to be, but I do like the fact that we have enough space to be able to run anti-meta floodgates, and Gazimon is one of the better ones, allowing us to stop the opponent's memory manipulating shenanigans. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Tsukaimon. So Tsukaimon is another Digimon that we only care about for its inheritable on-delete effect, and this one is acting similar to Pinamon, where it's just allowing us to gain some extra memory when our Digimon does eventually get deleted. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Psychemon, and Psychemon, like Gazimon, is another anti-meta rookie that's also going to be a good tech or flex spot, so we could kind of customize the deck based on what we're expecting to face, and I do still like Psychemon to be able to stop the opponent from reducing their play cost of their Digimon to try to make their Digimon as inefficient as we can possibly make it. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Falcomon. So Falcomon is really important for the deck, acting as one of the key consistency tools, looking for our Ravemon and other bird-traded Digimon on top of our main tamer, which is going to be Keenan. And then he also has an inheritable ability of on-deletion that we could pair up with our other abilities and our other on-delete effects to gain as much value out of our Digimon getting deleted as we can, where it's going to start trashing cards out of the opponent's hand, which is something we really haven't seen a whole lot of in Digimon, but it does have that same conditional ability attached to it as Pinamon, so we do have to make sure that our Digimon are going to get deleted by anything but battle. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Devidramon. So Devidramon is, again, another Digimon with an inheritable ability of On Delete for us to gain advantage from, and it's doing the exact same thing as Tsukaimon, allowing us to be able to gain some extra memory for more powerful follow-up plays, or possible disruption plays towards the opponent, depending on whose turn it is when our Digimon gets deleted. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Devimon. So this is the EX1 version of Devimon, and again, we only care about the fact that it does have an inheritable on-deletion effect, where it's going to be allowing us to recycle some low-level Digimon back into our hand from our trash. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Peckmon. So Peckmon has a nice when digivolving ability where it allows us to set up our main tamer Keenan if we don't already have one in play, which is pretty standard for a lot of level 4 Digimon to be able to help us set up our tamer, so we could try to gain as much advantage in value off of our cards as we can. Then he, like all of the other level 4s that we're running, also comes with a nice inheritable ability with on delete, so that way we could synergize with our Digimon getting deleted in the deck, where again it's doing the exact same thing as Falcomon, which leads us into our level 5s, and I'm going to be running 2 copies of Pumpkinmon. So Pumpkinmon is another tech or flex spot for the deck, and I'm, again, only using him because he's actually one of the few level 5s that actually has an on-delete inheritable ability, so that way we don't necessarily care what we're utilizing when we're digivolving all the way up into our Ravemon, knowing we're going to be getting a whole bunch of value when our Ravemon gets deleted. And Pumpkinmon is doing something very similar to what we've already seen with Gabumon, adding some extra cycling into the deck. But the main ultimate of the deck and only other level 5 I'm going to be using is going to be 4 copies of Crowmon. So Crowmon is a really good Digimon for this deck to use, again, as one of the few level 5s with an inheritable on-delete ability, except this time, instead of following in the footsteps of Peckmon and Falcomon, it's going to add some extra control, where it's going to help us try to delete the opponent's low-level Digimon, on top of the fact that he actually has a nice native ability, where if we have a purple tamer in play, then we could digivolve him into a Ravemon by paying its Digivolution cost, so it's an easier way to be able to utilize our Ravemon. And then as far as the level 6s go, I'm only going to be running 4 copies of Ravemon. So Ravemon is just a really good Digimon, obviously being the key boss monster for how this deck wants to flow and function. It's a really good card to use in combination with what we just saw with Crowmon, just because we could take advantage of all of this card's abilities, even digivolving it off of our Crowmon mid-attack. Just because he natively comes with the jamming ability, so the attack is going to be safe, and we're not necessarily worried about him dying to the opponent's security Digimon, so again, we could gain as much value off of our on-delete abilities as we possibly can, especially the ones with a condition where our Digimon needs to not be deleted by battle. Then he also has a nice end of attack ability, to be able to basically delete this Digimon, triggering all of our on-delete abilities, and it's going to end up replaying itself, acting like a ninja that's going to be a little bit hard to get rid of. Then, on top of that, he comes with his own on-delete ability, so that way we get absolute max value off of as many on-delete abilities as we can, digivolving all the way up into this card, where he's also going to try to pick apart the opponent's hand or the opponent's security. And then the last Digimon of the deck is going to be the only level 7 of the deck, and that's going to be 2 copies of Shine Greymon Ruin Mode. So Shine Greymon Ruin Mode is a tech or flex spot, and it could really be anything you feel like you want it to be, but I do like what this card is doing for the deck, interacting and synergizing with all of our on-delete effects. So he himself does have a when digivolving and on delete effect to be able to debuff all of the opponent's Digimon on their field, and if we chain his abilities together, then we could utilize that ability twice to be able to have a huge debuff on the opponent's field, stopping and ruining a lot of potential play lines. Then he also has a way to actually be able to delete himself, where he has a nice end of attack ability to delete him and to be able to recover one, and if we have a tamer in play, hatch another Digi-Egg into an empty space in our raising area, so we could start reloading right away. And the fact that we also have a little bit of recovery just helps with the deck's overall survivability. Even though, yes, we are going to be losing our high level Digimon, the benefits will sometimes outweigh the loss, especially with all of the other on-delete abilities triggering in combination with his own. And then when it comes to our tamers, I'm going to be running 4 copies of the main tamer of the deck, which is going to be Keenan. So Keenan is going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixing tamer, so that way our memory is always going to be set to 3, so we can make our plays as efficient as we can possibly make them. Then on top of that, he's going to be interacting with our Ravemon and our other bird-traded Digimon himself. By when our Digimon are getting deleted, then we get to draw a card, and if the Digimon was deleted by an effect, then we also get to gain a memory, making our cards as efficient as we can possibly make them. And then the only other tamer that I'm going to be running in the deck is going to be 3 copies of Analog Youth. So Analog Youth is a really decent tamer, not only just because of how cheap and efficient he is, but also acting as a good consistency tool, allowing us to try to dig off the top 3 for any of our Digimon cards, and then the rest go into the trash, which, as we know, being a purple deck, the trash doesn't mean things actually stay in the trash. Then, on top of that, he also is synergizing when our higher level Digimon are getting deleted, so that way we could try to gain as much value off of our cards as we possibly can, where if our high level Digimon gets deleted with an inheritable source, then we get to suspend this tamer to be able to gain a memory and hatch another Digi-Egg into an empty space in our raising area, so that way we have some solid reload ability for our raising area, so we could better utilize it. And then when it comes to the options, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Calling from the Darkness as one of the cheapest and most efficient ways to be able to delete our Digimon ourselves when we need to. So not only are we using this card to delete our Digimon so we could trigger some of their on-delete effects, but we're also going to be able to return a Digimon from our trash back into our hand. So again, we have some solid recyclability off of some of our cards. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Ame no Ohabari. So this is going to be the main option that we're going to use to be able to delete our Digimon, so that way we could try to gain as much value off of this card as we can, because we also get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon whose level is equal to or less than the Digimon that we've already deleted, which ideally we should be deleting our Ravemon, because of the added benefit where if we are deleting a Ravemon, then we get to replay the Ravemon from our trash for free, so it's allowing us to not only clear the opponent's field, but maintain a field ourselves. Then it has a nice security ability, where we then get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with the lowest level, so it's still some removal even coming out of our security, acting as a good security threat. And then the last option card of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Purple Memory Boost. So Purple Memory Boost is just to add some extra consistency into the deck to make sure that we could try to find all of our parts and pieces that we're looking for. Then it has a nice secondary main ability of Delay to gain 2 memory when we need to be able to make some very powerful follow-up plays with. And then when it comes to the overall game plan and gameplay of the deck, it is just trying to build a single stack into a really powerful Ravemon. So we're just going to be utilizing as many of these on-delete inheritables as we possibly can, so that way when we do go into our Ravemon and our Ravemon ends up deleting himself, whether it's through his effect or some of our various other effects, or even potentially by the opponent's effect, it's just going to trigger all of these on-delete abilities to be able to do a whole lot of different things. So it doesn't necessarily matter what you're going to be using in your inheritables as you're building your stack, as long as there's going to be one bird or avian in there, which is going to be your Falcomon, your Peckmon, and your Crowmon. So we just care about having one of those in his inheritable abilities, so that way we could actually utilize his end of attack ability to be able to delete himself and replay himself at the end of the opponent's turn, so the opponent really wouldn't have the opportunity to potentially delete him again if he were to replay himself relatively quickly. So we just have a whole bunch of on-delete abilities that we're going to be pairing up with him, and that's the only importance when it comes to stack building, is just making sure you do have that bird or avian. Then when it comes to the usage of our tamers, when we're going into our big stack and our big stack it gets deleted, that's where these two tamers just come in lots of handy to be able to use Analog Youth to be able to hatch a new egg right away, because ideally we're going to be hiding our Digimon in our raising area and then move it out as soon as we are in our main stack. So this is kind of where Crowmon becomes super useful, is because we can move our Digimon out early enough, swing with our Crowmon with his inheritable abilities, and then be able to digivolve into a Ravemon right away, and then Ravemon's ability will be able to delete himself, and then that will trigger the Analog Youth, so that way we could hatch a new Digi-Egg and start digivolving into a new Digimon if our turn doesn't pass, thanks to some of the potential abilities to gain lots of memory off of something like our Tsukaimon, our Devidramon, and even our Keenan. So that's where Keenan comes in handy, is because it's also interacting with the fact that our Digimon are going to be deleting themselves, so we could get some extra cycling and memory management, so we could try to make our cards as efficient as we possibly can. So there's just a lot of really nice built-in synergy on how we could try to line up our cards to best synergize and interact with our Ravemon. And that's kind of just where the option comes in handy, as just an alternative way to A, try to control the field, and B, utilize our on-delete ability off of our Ravemon to still be able to maintain and have a Ravemon on our field as a sticky body. And then we could utilize Shine Greymon Ruin Mode to go on top of the now naked Ravemon, which then resets the usability of our Analog Youth. So there is just a whole bunch of different synergies going on centered around our on-delete abilities, and that's why it's super important, just because of the way the dex ratios is, that we play something like Purple Memory Boost to make sure that we have the consistency we need, finding our very specific parts and pieces, and that's why I'm also prioritizing a lot of really decent draw and discard effects, so that way we could make sure that we could try to gain as much advantage on our cards and make sure we could see our parts and pieces when we need to. And as I already stated before, the deck is kind of sitting in an incomplete state, but we at least do have the ability to make something playable based on the themes that the deck is trying to play around with, while we wait for BT13 to add in a whole new evolutionary line to further flesh out the deck's consistency and its overall game plan. So for the time being, I kind of laid out a nice core, utilizing a lot of the cards from EX4 as the base or foundation for what the deck is and how it wants to be played. And just because the deck is in an incomplete state compared to what it's going to be in the future, doesn't mean that we still can't do some very fun and interesting things in the meantime, running a whole bunch of various other tech and tools to be able to customize the deck to make it your own. So if you wanted to, we do have access at some other really good generic level 3s, so we could run Ignitemon as a way to potentially delete our Digimon to trigger our on-delete effects ourselves, while also controlling the opponent's field with an inheritable ability that may or may not come up. Then we also could take the deck into a little bit more of a security focus, running a couple of decent security cards. Then we do have another bird-traded purple Digimon we could run in the deck to try to up its consistency in the form of Saberdramon, while also having a nice inheritable ability of Retaliation, putting the opponent at a lose-lose situation, because they're either A, going to attack into our Digimon and lose their Digimon potentially because of Retaliation, or it forces the opponent to try to delete our Digimon through a card effect, so that way they don't suffer their Digimon dying due to Retaliation, which again will trigger our on-delete effects. Then we do have some pretty decent Digimon that natively have on-delete effects that we could use as a resource engine to try to act as sacrificial fodder or be aggressive with, depending on the situation and how we're going to be utilizing the card. So we could use something like Gazimon Scatter Mode as just a really good card to be able to use in combination with our low-level inheritable on-delete effects. Then dipping back into that security sub-theme, we do have Witchmon as a really good security Digimon that we could use generically to add some recyclability to try to grab back the cards that we need to be able to rebuild our stack once we've already seen the card at least once. And another inheritable on-delete effect that we could use in the level 4 slot is going to be Dark Tyrannomon. I'm not super thrilled with this card, but suspending the opponent's Digimon could come in handy in case you're running some synergies that could best take advantage of this. Then we could lean into the Cerberusmon and Cerberusmon Werewolf package as just a really good tool to use to up the overall aggression while still utilizing a lot of our mid to low level on-delete effects as well. Then we do have a whole bunch of other generic level 5s that you could tech in, all depending on where you think the meta is going to go and the type of card effects that you would potentially want and need. So you could play something like an anti-meta card like Neo Devi that's more specifically hating on tamers and the opponent utilizing and playing their tamer. Or you could dip into some discard-based synergy and to play something like Rebellimon, just because we already have a lot of draw and discard-based cards already, thanks to just some of the on-delete inheritables that we're already utilizing. And Rebellimon also will make our Digimon blocker and have retaliation as an alternative way to potentially try to have the opponent delete our Digimon for us. Or you could just use something as simple as Skullsatamon as just a way to be able to climb up your stage and be able to grab back cards that were already used, so that way we could try to increase the likelihood of being able to utilize our tools when they do end up in the trash like a normal purple deck. And then coinciding with Cerberusmon and Werewolf mode and all of the retaliation type of abilities we could be leaning into, we could also play as a supporting level 6 Minervamon as the best supporting level 6 because she's already interacting with an on-delete ability of her own. And then we do have some really good level 7s that the deck could run in complements if Shine Greymon is out of your reach. So we do have Death Exmon as just a good generic one for any deck to use, period, but something a little bit more synergistic and something that could still be pretty effective, especially if you're leaning into a more security-heavy build, is going to be Omnimon's Work Defeat, because he has an on-delete ability himself, and he has a nice when digivolving ability that we could use to be able to try to help control the opponent's field. Then we do have some other really good tamers and options that we could run. There's a slew of different options that could help delete our own Digimon to do various different things, and Mimi is a good tamer to coincide with that, not only to try to tax the opponent for the usage of their options, but to try to make our options a little bit cheaper and more efficient to use. Then we could think about trying to build the deck to best support Alice McCoy, just because we could incorporate some Digimon that natively have on-delete effects on the low levels, so that way we could use them as fodder for making our evolution into our Ravemon as cheap and efficient as we could possibly make it, while triggering some more on-delete effects. And then we do have Matt Ishida from the starter deck as just another generically good card to interact with the fact that our Digimon are going to be deleting themselves by allowing us to have extra access at memory generation. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.